Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another Teacher Joseph podcast. Today, I want to remind you about the importance of small talk. Small talk is something which British people use in order to communicate with each other, but yet to say nothing. It's very important to try to soften atmospheres, to welcome new people, and to be polite by initiating conversation, which ultimately doesn't really mean anything. To initiate small talk, we use universal subjects. We talk about things like the weather, sports, perhaps preferences. We may give opinions on the company in the workplace or the bus service. Comments like, "Oh, isn't the weather really bad today? Aren't these trains terrible? I wish there were more buses." These kind of questions initiate small talk. One question I'm asked a lot is, why bother? Why do small talk? Well, it's so much part of our culture that if you work within a team in a company, you could find yourself in trouble if you don't use it. People could say that you're not a good team player if you don't come into work smiling and trying to initiate what sometimes looks like pointless conversation. Small talk is a very important part of British life. And if you come from a culture where there isn't any small talk, you might find it very difficult to adjust. I don't mean that you have to come to work every day with a basket of fruit over your arm, smiling all the time at your colleagues. You just have to be prepared to kind of pass a few moments to say hello, how are you, terrible weather. This makes English people feel very comfortable. One difficulty with small talk, if you're not used to it, is to know when to stop. British people are experts at talking about the weather. We could talk for 10-15 minutes about the weather if you allow us to. Isn't the weather terrible today? Oh yes, but not as bad as yesterday. Did you see the storm at 3 o'clock? Oh yes, it was awful. But winters here are harsh, aren't they? Oh yes, very bad. And it goes on and on and on. So after a few sentences, it's okay to stop small talking, but it is absolutely necessary. It seems to me that younger people, perhaps those who work in newer industries like the IT industry, are not so good with small talk. Many of them lack social skills to have such conversations, but yet here in the UK it's still absolutely necessary as a cultural thing. If I call a customer services helpline today for anything, I would be expected to ask, "How are you?" And I would expect an answer of, "I'm fine, how are you?" If someone asks you at work, "Hey, how are you?" don't just reply with fine, but reply with, "Fine, thanks for asking. And what about you?" You have to show initiative and willingness to engage in this. I agree that it is a bit pointless, especially when you're trying to complain about something. To ask, "Hey, how are you?" or to write a really nasty letter of complaint and then sign it "kind regards" seems a little bit strange, but yet this is the paradox of living and working in the UK. British people rarely say what they mean or mean what they say, so it's very hard sometimes to navigate things like small talk. If you ask me, "How are you?" you'll always get the same answer, "Fine." But how I say that word will tell you how I really am. For example, how are you? Fine. Fine? Well, yeah, fine, I suppose. And the last answer tells you that I'm not fine. But I would be expecting you to ask further about that, rather than me having to tell you. So, small talk can take many different forms, and it can lead to deeper conversations, but it's very important just to be aware that talking about nothing for a few minutes is absolutely necessary. Another form of small talk is humour. Sometimes English people might try to make a joke out of something which is universal in order just to break the silence or to make you feel more comfortable. Rather than saying, I don't understand, or just ignoring them, it would be much better to try to inquire what the humour is. There's no harm in saying, can you explain that for me? But one thing is for sure, with small talk, when you're talking about things which aren't really important, then the conversation really is just for the sake of conversation. Nobody really cares about the weather, unless, of course, there has been a really bad storm. If you're unsure how to proceed with small talk, just notice how other people do it. They walk in the morning to work, they say good morning, and then they immediately start talking about the weather. That's usually how it begins. You will often know if someone isn't using small talk if they use the present perfect. If you consider, how was your weekend, compared to, hey, how's your weekend been? One is asking for a list of events that you did at the weekend, and the other is inquiring about your actions and how you feel about it. Anyway, small talk is very, very important. We all do it, even if it's just to say our greetings. I agree that it is a bit pointless, but it's something we go through, and it's so much part of English culture that unfortunately it's not possible to escape it. So, the weather, the sports match, how bad the system is that we work under. Usually small talk is largely negative, but rarely controversial. That's it from me. I hope this little reminder about small talk helps you. Even when you come to an English class, some small talk would be required. There's always that moment where I ask, hi, how are you? What's the weather doing in your country? But these things really are just to give you the chance to speak. I do understand though how pointless it is, but please try to go with it, because the alternative is ending up very, very lonely with everyone hating you. Well, there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this. See you. Bye.